Bow, bow, bow. That's the song. That's the No Man's Sky song. I just wrote it.
What the fuck was that?
Don't even bother.
Welcome to NOCLIP. I'm Chad Rutherland.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
Today we're going to be talking about No Man's Sky, which was released in 2016 and was developed by Hello Games. The game itself is an open world exploration survival light game. It's kind of a difficult game to classify, and I feel like it operates differently for a lot of people. Like, depending on who's playing it, the way that you're going to play it is going to be a lot different.
And that particular diversity of approaches, something that has become wider over time as they have desperately tried to satiate like thousands upon thousands of rabid people and in the aftermath of their own public promises. So if you're talking about the initial launch build of the game, like the scope of the kind of person who can play and enjoy this is a lot narrower than it is these days. And for clarification, we were talking about what's next?
Next.
We're in next? Okay.
Yeah, it's like D&D next,
Right.
but with less role-playing.
Slightly. You can turn yourself into a cool triangle head man, which is all I really needed. That's enough roleplay for me in this Space Odyssey.
I do want to... I guess, okay, a couple of things. The first thing that we need to probably get out of the way. This game released to a heaping helping of controversy that I'm sure nobody listening to this is a stranger to. The game, the developer of the game, particularly Sean Murray, who's the one that get brought on to do interviews for different things, including going so far as to appearing on actual, like, national television shows, which is pretty it's uncommon for game developers and borderline unheard of for an indie developer to do this. But went on to national television, talked about the game, and talked in sort of this, like, wide-eyed innocence about the idea behind the game and the things that they wanted to accomplish with it. And basically the game that was shipped is not the same as the creator's own idealistic view of it, which is, well, it was a lie, for the most part. Like, I don't take as harsh a stance as, like, Big Cock 69 on the internet does. That this is what I'm going what I'm going with for my just this is an internet handle gag.
Okay.
It could have been better.
Yeah.
My improv skills not on point for that. But there was a bit of misleading advertising for this game. I had no experience with this. I did not see any advertisements. I had a vague notion of what the game was supposed to be when I picked it up. And in fact, most of the playtime that I have in this game comes from before this update. It comes from the launch version of the game. And I am one of the few people I know who actually came out pretty positively because I wasn't expecting something on a grander scale than what I got.
I don't even know how to phrase this, but like, I don't know how you didn't like see any advertising for this game, because it felt like literally everyone on the internet was talking about it before it came out. And I mean, even if you put that kind of stuff aside, like, yeah, the developers are at fault for like talking so grandiosely about the game when they shouldn't have. But like, even if you put all that aside, because I don't really care about it either.
Right.
I feel like this game, on paper, feels like it has so much possibility space, and I think that's what leads to like so many people being really disappointed with it, because it ends up just being like a walking sim exploration with a little bit of survival stuff in it. And when someone like describes the game to you before you've had any if you don't know anything about it, you would imagine so much like more shit that you could do in the game. And I think that's where a lot of the problems come from. with like public opinion on the game.
No, and I can for sure see that. And the other thing is, I don't begrudge anybody feeling like cheated or lied to or just disappointed. All of those feelings are they're not unique to this type of a game. Like, a lot of people have felt disappointed over other games that they've bought and played based on like a hype cycle that precedes the game's actual release before people really know what a game is about. This game just happened to be like a very high profile version of it, and it comes largely due to how insanely well this game sold at launch. Like, millions and millions of copies of this game were sold immediately, and like there was a big old scandal, and everybody returned their game, and they extended deadlines for refunds so that people could return the game in case they thought like, oh, maybe it just takes a few hours to get started, and that kind of a thing. I wasn't one of those people clamoring for a refund, but I don't think that those people were necessarily misguided or anything.
I ignored all of this because I am an old person and I don't care about the youth or the things that the youth do.
Mm-hmm.
I did not buy this game at launch because I knew immediately that it was not for me, because it looked too progressive and too much... It looked too much like... When I say progressive, I don't mean liberal. I mean like progressive, like prog rock. Like, there's too much like light, colorful things.
It does kind of feel like it would appeal to someone that likes Minecraft or something. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
No.
That is more true now. However, I love what he is getting at, which is that it could appeal to somebody who listens to Rush.
Yes.
Like,
okay.
Yes.
Like, that is the perfect embodiment of this game, where it's this sort of like far out, like retro sci-fi sort of like vibe to it. And a lot of the positive reviews of this game that I've seen focus on sort of that aesthetic aspect, where this game feels like it's ripped from the covers of paperback sci-fi novels from 1960s, 1970s. And I do agree with that, and that's part of what I love about the game, but we can talk about that sort of more in depth after we get through this like elongated introduction.
Yeah. My point is merely that I knew from the outset that this game functionally couldn't be a lot of what people expected of it at the time. Regardless, I mean, that's not to diminish the ludicrous technical achievements of what this game is. Mm-hmm. It's just you can't simulate like everyone's space opera, because space opera's defining features are like their unbelievable complexities in lots of crazy ways. But I frankly wasn't interested until everyone kept talking about it, and the game kind of experienced its more recent like renaissance as they kept updating it to such an extent that it now had that the discussion was less dominated by people's expectations and more by the present systems available in the game. And while I didn't think the game could be this crazy space opera at launch, considering that public opinion had actually started to shift on it was just mind-blowing to me, because it suggested they might have actually partially succeeded at that goal.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to play it.
And not to, what I'm sure is, make the same joke that everyone has, though honestly I've not heard anyone else do it yet. I feel like after 2 years of development and the multiple patches they've put through the game to enhance the content, in some way they've transformed No Man's Sky into Every Man's Sky, where every possible way to interact they've attempted to amp up and introduce more systems and more things to, base your adventure on. And we'll, I believe, go into our own experiences here, but I'm not overly thrilled with the changes.
Is how much of like a euphemism is that? Like, are you saying like, I could take or leave the changes, or like, fuck these changes?
No, it is not. No, that does not belie any hidden malice toward the changes. Mm-hmm. I find that they're mostly additive overall, like the difference between the base game, which I think I'm the only one who played. I know that you've seen a little bit of it.
Yeah, I watched you play it, and from what I remembered, other than being able to play in third person, I didn't notice anything different about the game. But I mean, it might just be because it's been so long.
Yeah, it's a lot of additional layers of systems and things.
Well,
on
also
top
there
of
were
each other.
shelters. I don't think that was in the original build.
Yeah, the base building was introduced, and I think it's either the first or the second. So I like many people, played this game when it came out, played it for until I was done with it, and then came back after next, because this is like the big explosion of content that they put out, and are now experiencing the previous, the base building one. I think it's called Pathfinder, where they introduced vehicles, and Atlas Rising, where they introduced a plot to the game. And then next with all of the additional enhancements like terrain morphing and all that shit. The reason that I say that I wasn't overly thrilled is mostly because while it's all additive, I can't really, like, if there's anything I don't like, I just didn't engage, which is fine because this game gives you lots to engage with now. A lot of it just felt super unnecessary to me. Like, missions don't seem like a thing that I needed or wanted at all. There's like a weird, like, sort of, I don't know. In between bouts of playing this game, preparing for the podcast, I was busy, like, hoovering up all the No Man's Sky content that I could find, because I knew from the outset that I wasn't going to experience a tenth of what was there, like, even mechanically, that they've added to this game. And I'm pretty sure that I was right. Like, maybe like 12%, but that's about it.
I'm deeply interested in how you feel about this game, Andy.
I ended up, like, watching Chad play it, I felt like it seemed boring as sin. Like, just completely boring in every conceivable way. But I found, like, actually playing it myself, I enjoyed it more than I expected. But, like, there's just not enough to latch onto for me. And, like, the lack of variety in, like, you go to each planet and it kind of feels the same, but it just looks different. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everything, all the variety is more or less just in, like, the color of the planet and the actual, like, terrain of it. And, like, you know, you land on the planet and, like, there's, like, some, like, shelters there, and there's, like, an alien sitting in a chair inside with, like, a clipboard or something. You know, like, it's, like, the same thing on every planet. That's basically was my experience. Like, there's just not quite enough to engage with for me. I like the base, like, exploration, but I feel like there's not enough interesting things to find.
What did your mechanical loop look like? Because, like Chad correctly recognized here, I think everyone's loop in this game is going to be different. Potentially vastly different.
Well, I was going through trying to just speed through the, like, main initial quests. So I was just following that initially. But once I stopped, it was like, basically just go to a planet and try to explore it as much as I could, but I'd find that would quickly get boring for me, and then kind of, like, rinse and repeat. Like, that, like, the most, like, exciting part of the game for me is actually seeing the planet from space and, like, traveling to it and wondering what it might be like, you know, entering the atmosphere, landing, and walking around for a little bit, and then it just kind of drops off for me.
Yeah, okay, so I don't agree with that. I mean, it's not that I don't agree with you not enjoying something.
Right.
Because that's entirely subjective. But my subjective experience was basically the opposite of that, where my primary engagement with this game was just the things that I wanted to do, that this game would occasionally put hurdles in my way and occasionally just super not and let me do what I wanted, was to find a planet that looked neat, land on it, and then just walk around for, like, hours. And I never got to a point where I felt like that was, like, a sustainable activity in order to, like, feel like the game was doing anything for me. But there were times when, you know, a lot of my early time with this game was, like, I found a cool planet that had, like, caves in it. And I just was like spelunking for a long time and going around and going like, oh, look at this shit, and like whatever, and then like my inventory would fill up, and then I had to like make an excursion from the cave, which was sort of like that's the kind of story that this game wants you to tell, right? It wants you to be like, I got to the cool planet, and I looked around for a while, and I found this crevasse, and I hopped into it, and I crawled through it, and on my hands and knees, and what really you're just like holding W, looking around and getting some carbon off of some shit on the walls, and then having to like make my way back out and find my ship. Because of this, like some of my favorite changes that they made to the game, where it's like the ability to call your ship to you is really nice, because you don't have to like make the trek all the way back to where you landed, and it kind of gives you more of an open exploration. I found a planet that was just like entirely ocean, and that was dotted with islands all over it. And the water was horribly toxic, but I could make my way to another island by swimming, and it was really, like, I don't know, like, something about that was just, like, relaxing. Even though I was kind of on a time limit, I could just, like, refill my, you know, life support systems as I went. And that kind of thing is just, like, that's what I was here for. And all the additional stuff maybe didn't add to that.
Yeah, it's like, for me, it would be, like, similar, where, like, I come across a cool cave or a lake or something, I'd be like, oh, neat. And, like, I go into, like, the cave, I'm like, this is cool. And then it's like, oh, but there's nothing to do in here. I mean, like, it's kind of nice to look at, and, like, I go through it, and I come back out. Okay, you know, move on. I'll appreciate it for what it is, and I'll move on. But then I find another one, and it plays out exactly the same. It looks the same inside. There's also nothing to do in it. And, like, that really, like, there's diminishing returns were, like, very real in this game for me, where it's just, like, I feel like it's going to be, like, my main thing, and it's a very shallow thing to say, but it feels like you quickly run out of things to do.
You quickly run out of diverse things to do.
Yeah. Well,
you can do a lot.
You can blast a million rocks. You know, you could get in the game and be like, I'm gonna blast every rock on this planet,
right?
And you would play the game for like 500 plus hours doing that.
The concept of this game basically boils down to: do you want to blast a million rocks? Well, too fucking bad. 1 million rocks is not even a drop in the bucket for the amount of rocks that you can blast in this game. You can blast rocks until the day you die. You will not have made 1 grain of sand's progress toward the rocks that we put in this fucking game.
Correct.
You can't handle a rock generating algorithm.
But yeah, like, do I hope we got the audio levels right, because that's just gonna blow everybody's fucking ears out.
Yeah, but like, but as much as I would keep playing, I just felt like it was missing like that one thing for me to latch on to, like a reason to go to that next cave, and a reason to swim in that next lake, or whatever thing I might find and think was initially cool. What about you, JJ?
There is a version of this game that I could play for the rest of my life, and this is not that version.
Sure.
It's real close. Specifically, why did I say that like a weird...
Like you were like...
Specifically!
You were taken by surprise by how specific this was going to be.
Specifically, I think, honestly, the core mechanical hook of the game, the way they implemented the build yourself up from nothing crafting system, I found almost universally just a hindrance to my enjoyment of this game. Not all crafting. I like crafting, and there's lots of elements of this game that I wanted to engage with from a crafting perspective. I just always felt like everything that I had to do, I was always building up from the lowest tier, because all of your basic methods of engagement consume resources.
Right. That
That was the thing that I found more annoying than anything else about this game. Honestly, if I didn't have to refill any of like your equipment, or not necessarily the fuels, I can get the utility for why you want to have to force exploration in each zone for like warp fuel and things like that.
Right.
But the amount of time that I had to spend just like mining ferrite just so I could get my terrain generator working again.
Yeah.
Like I felt like 30% of my time in this game was like meaningless busy work to re-engage with the other 70% of this game. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed that 70% a whole lot, like weirdly a lot. I completely sympathize with what you're describing, Andy, where you get to a location and there's nothing there to hold your attention. And my ideal version of this game would be one in which you didn't have those crafting elements that forced you to engage with any particular planet long enough for it to get boring and annoying. Like, I don't think it'd be a problem to have each planet be really shallow like that if you could just pop in, be like, oh, this is neat, and then like pick up some copper and leave. But no planet is like that. Every planet, at least in the early game, for like the 20 hours or something I spent with it,
right,
is you're going to stick on this planet for about like hour and a half, maybe, roughly. Build up these resources. Make sure, don't mess up with how you're taking off and landing with your vehicle. Because if you forget to get something before you leave, you got to restart the whole process. Got to get more fuel for that now. Mm-hmm. I feel like I was redoing the same base mechanical interactions over and over again, frequently enough, that I didn't have the kind of freedom that I wanted to in a game like this.
Again, it seems like it should be entirely about freedom.
Yes. I know that there's like a free, like a creator mode or something, one that turns off most of these things and makes it more Minecrafty, but that's not what I want either. Like, I want to be able to build up to a fucking freighter. Like, I want to have that kind of crafting interaction, but the game just threw up too many barriers for that. Like, another barrier, even outside of having to refuel all your own equipment, is the way that there's a separate nanite currency to unlock blueprints. Mm-hmm. In particular, I don't see any good reason in the system for why I don't have most, if not all, blueprints for like craftable items immediately. Like
you just get it from your computer.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's certain things that I think. So the game wants to give you a sense of progression, and additionally, especially post the Atlas Rising update, it wants to give you a reason to go interact with the beings in the universe. Mm-hmm. And part of the way that they do that is through the quest structure, the addition of like freighter mechanics, like your fleet mechanics, which I actually did kind of really like, and if I go back to this game, is something that I do want to explore deeper. Mm-hmm. And then your shops and your ship upgrades, all that kind of thing. And because of that, they sort of are forced to have to make that worthwhile in some way. I agree that a lot of blueprints I feel like you should be able to start with, but I see like things like upgrades, like I got like recently like one that allowed me to jetpack for like a fucking year and a half.
Yeah.
Not at all true, but like it was like a good like 25% increase or something. I was happy to have it. I liked flying around. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of thing should be behind at least some kind of a wall, something that you have to hurdle to get to it. My issue is more with sort of the resource grind, particularly of the more common materials, and the reason is because you know that you need a bazillion of them at all times. Mm-hmm. And so you're constantly collecting them, but then you have to manage your resources. You got to put things in your initially incredibly limited inventory space. And then you have inventory space you can only access when you're on your ship. And then you have the world's most inconvenient thing in the whole world, which is inventory that you can only access when you're on the freighter. And that loop is really what fucking destroyed it for me, where mm-hmm. That's why I kind of honed in on I just want something to, like, put a podcast on and tool around in space kind of game, because the crafting just did not super engage with me.
Not at all. Like, in the early game especially, I was actively feeling like if I picked up some of the rarer elements, or if I found something I'd never seen before, something that in a game like this should be like part of the core engagement, where I'm like, what the fuck is this thing? It's radioactive, crazy ball.
You feel like you're going to have to throw it away?
Yes, and I have many times. I don't know how much, like, I picked up like a thing of neon, and I have no idea what it's for. And the game, because I couldn't access any of the other blueprints, it was literally useless to me, and I had no way of knowing what it was for.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I threw away tons of like rare end game equipment just because of a lack of inventory space and no way for me to know the comparative value of things that weren't immediately necessary.
Yeah. I feel like you should be able to like access your ship's inventory from anywhere. Or have some kind of like way to send goods somewhere else.
They did introduce this. I don't know when you pick it up, and you have to do a certain number of things like related to the plot to get it. I happen to have one when I restarted it now, and by restarted I mean re-picked it up. There's really no reason to ever restart No Man's Sky. But a thing called I think it's the Atlas Pass is the one that does it, or something else allows you to transfer goods from you to your ship. And from you to the freighter, but you can't. It doesn't go the other way. Yeah, and that's the part.
Or like you should be able to like set up a camp and be able to like deposit materials at the camp. Or
you can do that. It's just really hard to access the camp.
Yeah.
Well, unless you. So yeah, this is meaty because this is where we're talking about the parts where this game like almost pulls the wool over your eyes and goes, quality of life changes, but in reality it's just more grinding to do. Because if you get 16 of these glyphs, you can activate these teleporter portals, and then they can teleport you to a base on a planet that you just kind of like dial into, and then it's really convenient to get to a base to get your shit, because you just go to a space station, hop in the porter, jump on over to your base, and there you are. You're back on the planet, whatever system it was in. But the grinding required to accumulate all of that stuff is probably dozens of hours. And that's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't even really engage with the base building too much because, one, it's resource intensive, and I'm still like in the world of No Man's Sky. I'm like mid game, and that's not where you need to be spending a bunch of resources building a house.
How much like how deep is like the system? Because like I only engage with like the tutorial base building part, and I could just like make a very basic ass looking shelter. Like, do they have other like skins and textures and things to put on them?
Fuck yes.
Could like is there a point in this game that I could get to where I could land on a planet and build like an Ewok village in the trees?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's pretty sweet.
It is pretty sweet.
At no point is depth ever a problem in this game.
Right.
Like, you have an infinite amount, especially after all these goddamn updates, of things and goals that you can set for yourself at any time. And I love that about this game. There is just a version of it with more permissive base systems where the things that you're doing over and over again aren't taxing or don't take up as much of your mental energy that I would love.
And I feel like it would really benefit the game to like get into that quicker.
Yeah. I've heard roughly quoted a few different places, like 20 to 40 hours is what it takes before you can, like, you're out of every possible tutorial for all the ludicrously large number of systems.
Because I think I played for like 11 hours, and like that was me getting through the tutorial and then exploring part of the galaxy, like a couple planets.
Right. Yeah, it is a narrow in scope, but each like thing that it chooses to give you to do is incredibly deep. It's really strange. It's like rather than if you were digging a mine in order to mine resources, which is what this game wants you to do, so I'm using it as a metaphor. And instead of digging a mine shaft and then digging out from once you got there, so making a procedurally generated or a procedural generation algorithm that creates planets in space, and then seeing what you could do from there by expanding out and getting to all of the ore that's in the mine. You instead went back up to the top and then moved and then just dug another deep hole, hoping that you would land in like a convenient location like cool vehicles or very intense base building mechanics or like new procedurally generated cool skies and fauna, which I'm a huge fan of. But then sometimes just fucking drill into the dirt for hours and hours and get nothing, which is where I think some of the things that they decided to do with this game. It has a limited verb set, and that's the problem.
Right, yeah. Like, if I wasn't in grad school and was also 15, and this would fill the same headspace that I feel like MMOs filled for me at that time, and I would eat this game up. I would snarf it down like the best of sausages. But like because I am an adult and I'm unwilling to put in the amount of time in the based repetition of your interactions, it just hurts the entire game for me. Like, this is probably the most literal, or let's say, this is the most comparable case to me of, like, the Final Fantasy 13 rule. Like, I bet this game's awesome if you get deep enough into it for a deep enough amount of time where those kind of resource expenditures become trivial to you, but I'm unwilling to put in that time. And I think if a game has like a 30-hour barrier to getting to the point where it is good, that is a problem with the game. Like a deep problem, and enough that I'm willing to overall step back from it.
I wonder if I could pay like a Korean account boosting company to get me a No Man's Sky save file that's just further into the game so that I can do the things that I enjoy doing. You know what I really enjoy doing? I like taking breaks from podcasts. You want to do that?
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back and we'll talk a little bit more about the mechanical engagement. See you guys in a minute. Welcome back to the podcast. So we were just having a conversation that I'm not going to let you guys hear any of, ever.
Dick in your mind. A dick in your mind.
But, which kind of reminded me of something that we just didn't really touch on very much, which is the, like, aesthetic of this game. We talked about it sort of harking back to, like, paperback covers of sci-fi novels and whatnot. And I hold that that is what they were going for. But Andy, how happy are you for the episode art to have such a, like, incredibly strong iconography present in this game?
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but I feel like the cover art's so good that whatever I come up with is going to feel really derivative of that.
That's probably true. But the thing is, so the Atlas, as put forth in this game, is always represented by this sort of, like, diamond shape. Like, it's like a beveled diamond. Mm-hmm. Like the Skyrim logo.
Like the Sims.
Yeah.
Thing.
It is in itself derivative because it is a basic shape.
Yes.
But it gives this, so you talked about the box art for the game. If you look at the box art of the game, what they present you with is this, like, semi-lush green landscape with, like, a weird colored sky.
Well, actually, it's not a green landscape, it's a red landscape.
But then it has this contrasting, like, the game's title, with the symbol in the middle of it. And I think that is, like, because everything, like, all else aside, procedural generation of this means that there cannot be a consistent aesthetic to every planet in the game. However, they really love and have tweaked the algorithm in such a way to make that, like, contrasting colors and weird combinations seem to be the norm when it comes to just going around. You can see it in, like, when you're doing, like, your pulse engine, it's just, like, it looks like Christmas lights. Like, it's just every imaginable color flying by you at light speed. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know, I always found that kind of thing, like, the just outrageous coloring and, like, visual elements present in this game were just a consistent draw for me.
Yeah, it almost kind of feels like cell shady in that way. There's, like, there's probably a name for this that I should know, but, like, those very, like almost kind of like Pantone kind of colors that are just really appealing.
Yeah, it's like I don't have an example like I thought I did.
Like, it reminds me of, like, even something like Overwatch or, like, the Wind Waker in its color scheme.
Mm-hmm. And then it's just, like, the way that the
way that they're
is
rendered,
applied.
yeah.
Yeah. It gives it this sort of... I mean, I wanted to say otherworldly, but there are too many worlds to know which one it's even other
Yeah,
from.
they're definitely trying to make it feel alien with, like, the mixing of the colors, which is nice.
Yeah. So, I love all that, but have you guys, and just full disclosure, I didn't, ever encountered a chromatic planet?
Oh god, I specifically looked for them and failed.
Yeah. It's not like a super... I mean, I don't want to say it's not super common.
Do you mean
it's like,
monochromatic?
No, they're
Nope.
like a specific designation
Okay.
that like
This is a
rarely
thing.
comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like one of the things in the game that are supposed to be like the carrot at the end of your exploration stick, where like it's a super rare thing that's generated by the algorithm.
Okay.
Right. Because they'll like tweak the algorithm to when like certain conditions are met, it generates a planet that is like unique in some way. And a lot of them are just like extra alien, where like certain things are tweaked into... It's like if you took like the sliders in a game with character creation and just uncapped it and let you just like fuck with it infinitely.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be like huge plants or like rock formations that are way outside of like the usual realm. But the chromatic planets are interesting, and the way that they do them is they'll choose like a color or sometimes two colors, and that'll be like your base color for everything on the planet, and then everything else is like a washed out gray.
Mm.
And it is like creepy and intimidating when you like approach one, from what I've seen.
Yeah. I feel like they should have done more stuff like that with the whole game. That'd be pretty cool.
No, they did enough
Well,
of it.
not that specifically, but like more like weird, like a larger range of variations.
Yeah. They did intentionally increase the amount of variation as part of the updates that they went
Yeah.
through. There used to be less of that poor Souls playing launch
No,
No Man's Sky.
I am very much for like an extreme, weird, rare planet, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really neat like concept, and I think that it really like it gives you an appreciation for the regular visuals as well, for having like seeing what it is like when less is used. You get to see like just how varied everything ends up looking, and I don't know, I just kind of like I loved it for that reason more or less entirely. Like that whole concept I think is really good.
I wish that they would apply similar concepts to the living creatures in the galaxy, because I'm extremely happy aesthetically with the way that the planet algorithm works, which is almost like stupid to say, right? Like it's the reason the game exists is because the planet algorithm is that good.
Right.
But like I really could not care about this like stupid moldy bird people. Like it was like I don't.
Wait, are you talking about aliens or actual animals?
No, aliens.
Okay.
The stupid moldy birds aren't people. You can kill those. I'm talking about the ones that are given sentience and are also like strangely short. Like those aren't procedurally generated too, right? I'm assuming they can't because
You
they
mean
have
the Gek? Like,
yeah, the Gek.
Yeah.
That's them.
I got more of a lizard vibe from them.
Yeah,
but
I
that's
also
fine too.
did.
Whatever, they're
And
beaky.
they're called gecks. So I'm
Right.
assuming geckos were like the inspiration.
beak.
They do have a beak, but so did
Fair.
like some dinosaurs.
Whatever.
Which were lizards that became birds.
Yeah, I don't have to be a literal gecko, JJ.
Science.
I forgot for a minute that gecko is actually the name of a lizard, and that you weren't about to suggest they're referencing Gex, like the PS1
No.
mascot.
Right.
Whatever. My ignorance there. Thankfully, edited out of the
I
podcast.
was,
This
I
is
was
a-
actually going to make a reference to Gex when we started talking about this, and now I'm leaving this in, so too bad.
Okay.
Yeah, that was like something that stood out for me as well. Is I wish there was more going on with the aliens. Like I feel like that could have enhanced my enjoyment of the game, where if you landed on a planet and like things were happening to like the indigenous like people, like they're always in spacesuits, like implying that everyone else that you run into on the planet is also a spacefaring adventurer,
Right.
which is weird. Like you never just find like a village of aliens, you know, or something like I wanted that kind of stuff. Like I didn't want like there doesn't have to be like a deep narrative thread, that I can stumble onto on any one planet or anything. But like if I could like land on a planet, find an alien village, and it's like being attacked by local animals, and I can save them, or something like that.
Right.
Like that. I wanted that kind of stuff. I wanted the aliens to play into it more.
What's the name of that like old fancy spaceman, like Chuck Jones, or like who's the guy with the gun?
The guy with the gun.
The old space gun serials that Star Wars is based on.
Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon. That's it.
Flash Gordon, which is like a football player.
No,
though.
Buck
Rogers. You're thinking of Buck Rogers.
Buck Rogers.
Whatever.
However, Chuck Jones, who I believe is actually an animator, yeah,
for Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Duck Dodger
Dodgers.
from the 24th and a half century.
So there's a thread here. However, I'm going to cut that thread, and we're going to have a new mascot named Chuck Jones, a Kimbo blaster wielding space mercenary.
Yeah.
He's the NOCLIP space guy mascot.
Yeah, that's I can understand, and that's also something that I wanted out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I just my expectations weren't that high going into it that I didn't think they'd be there. But yeah, that'd make the game way goddamn better. I kind of felt like all the NPC interactions in this game are kind of tonally similar to those like kind of force-niced conversations you have with people who you have to be around on subways. like it's all like, oh, it's kind of pleasant and they seem pretty all right, but there's like weird things about them physically, and you never really get that deep.
People
anyway.
in subways don't often want to stab your brain with needles, though.
Yeah.
What?
That's the thing that with I want to say the Corvax or something. One of the ones that have like the faceplate that like displays things. The one of like the random encounter interactions with them is that they just like stab a needle into your brain and then give you money for it. It's really good.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes. But I imagine after that point, you just leave, right? And
Yeah, you just walk away.
All right.
As far as I know, no ill effects.
Yes. It's just shallow. It's shallow in a way that reminds me of the shallowness that we interact with strangers, because everyone kind of feels like a stranger in No Man's Sky.
Yeah, I actually like what they're going for with, like, learning the alien language.
Agreed.
Like, finding the, what are they, runes or whatever, monoliths.
The monoliths and the tablets and things like that. That's honestly one of my favorite systems that they implemented into the game. I'm actually kind of surprised that I didn't even think to mention it before.
The execution, I think, is a bit sloppy.
Yeah, it's because it's so uncommon. Like, you basically have to stop, because when I started this game, I did this. I stepped at every planet in the system, named all the fauna, named up some of the flora. I take a great pride in naming like some like weird hippo monster, but like every flower. I don't think that botany is my calling.
Yeah. There's not enough personality there, frankly. Like flowers don't really.
Yeah, flowers are flowers.
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty cool plants in No Man's Sky, no lie, but my attention was not focused on them. But if you do that, you'll start picking up the language at a moderately good clip. However, once you get into like the core engagement, you learn like a word a system maybe. I don't know, like I wish the game encouraged planetary exploration more than space exploration, and it does the opposite the further into it you get.
And like the first thing it does when you get to a new solar system is it reminds you to like get a new warp cell so that you can go to the next one. Like, you don't have to do that, but like just always there, like in your quest log, like, hey, you should be doing this next, please. Yeah. Get to the center of that galaxy or whatever.
This is actually, I think, as good a time of any to bring this up. Do you guys know the plot that was added in Atlas Rising, or do you know what the overarching plot of the main game was?
I know everything.
I don't know what they added. I know what the original like goal of the game was, or whatever you want to call it, the plot or whatever. Yeah,
so the plot in the base game, threadbare as it was, is basically just get to the center of the galaxy, and when you get there, you'll confront Atlas, or at least like some avatar of Atlas that is that like big black crystal thing. And basically they tell you, like, the universe was a simulation. It's like a weird meta thing and whatever. And personally, I think that's fine. What they did afterward is make you restart the game, which was, like, kind of a weird choice, given the fact that, like, you could very easily just be sent back out to do more stuff, because I don't think that finishing the plot really destroys what the core engagement is.
Right.
But then in Atlas Rising, they've added this whole other storyline where maybe you don't, like, stumble onto a planet and there are indigenous life forms that you have to save from, like, a wild dragon bear attack or whatever
right.
new, unique, horrible creature they've dreamt up is. But it does sort of delve deeper into, like, the motivations, and it's all very pulpy, and I think that the writing and the way that the story is presented is actually really good, but I didn't care. Like, it was really hard for me to care because it was so distant from what I was engaging with.
Yeah, I feel like, speaking as somebody who loves narratives in games,
right.
I feel like a narrative is not what the game needs. I think it needs more just, like, a little bit of sprinkling of, like, some authored content and some scenarios. I think that would go a lot further than putting a plot in.
I agree. Because even the things that they did add to give you sort of like a helping hand in terms of, like, moving you forward throughout the game, a lot of it has to do with are also procedurally generated things. It'll be like yeah, I'll do some missions. It's like, but it's just fucking random. Take a picture of 5 animals. Cool. Did it.
Sweet.
What's next? Take a picture of 3 animals. Like, alright, that sounds fine. Break into... I got a quest to break into a location and take something. I showed up, was attacked, left, they gave me the reward. Like, the quests don't even necessarily work all the time. It's not a good, like, move the narrative forward, nor is it really a good changing your engagement with the world. It's still just randomized nonsense to make you do randomized nonsense.
Yeah. Obviously, narratively speaking, I never really got over the initial hump enough to really personally get into the meat of what the story was talking about, but I know a lot about it because that was part of the reason that I wanted to re-engage in this game in the first place. Mm-hmm. Is I read reactions that were happening later, and that got me, which is why I know everything, but I'm not going to try and poorly repeat what I've heard from other people. Right. Like, specifically, go listen to Noah Cowdery on this. Like, his story synopsis on this is fantastic, and the way that they do, like, tons of metatextual elements in this game where they intentionally try and address a lot of the specific problems people had with the game on launch on a narrative level is, as far as I know, like, unprecedented in games generally, and
I've
really
heard
fantastic.
About this.
Yeah.
One of the like big story elements, a small story element that mimicked a, like, big real-time thing was that, like, against what Hello Games, I'm sure, thought was all the odds they could possibly put in, 2 people ended up in the same place at the same time and were not able to interact with each other, effectively debunking a, like, weirdly defended multiplayer claim that, I don't know, there was a weird whole circus that happened when this game came out, and they reference that real life event specifically within the narrative in Atlas Rising, and that's actually hilarious.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
because that's a really good choice, I think.
Because when you said that, like, them trying to incorporate that kind of stuff into the narrative, that just sounds like it would be a dumpster fire to me.
Oh no!
But apparently, if I trust Noah Caldwell-Gervais' opinion, so I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah. But
yeah, definitely not one complete dumpster fire.
Yeah, it just seems like that would be really easy to just take that in a bad direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because you also don't want to seem patronizing,
right?
Know? Like,
yeah.
oh, why did you?
Or the opposite, where you just kind of, like, shit on everybody's opinions.
Right.
Your patrons are really weird, Chad.
I know, yeah. This is how people talk. They grovel.
They're just the parents from the Peanuts.
Yep, exactly.
Wah, 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 wah.
Oh, you said patron, not peanuts.
What were we talking about?
No Man's Sky.
Oh, okay. So this is kind of like the last major thing that the game does that we haven't touched on, and I do want to talk about.
Yes.
And that is, I very much enjoy the way that space flight works in this game. I do very much not enjoy the way that space combat works in this game.
I agree 100%.
But I feel
It's
like
too hard to turn. Like, you have, like, such a limited field of view, and you have to, like, completely, like... It just does not work well.
Yeah, it controls, like, the lightest flight simulator imaginable, where the controls vaguely mimic the way that they would work if you had, like, a flight stick and, like, the big, like, panel of buttons, but you don't. You just have a mouse and directional buttons, which makes it kind of difficult to, like, maneuver in any sort of, like, a tight way.
It feels like they just programmed, like, a basic, like, flying, like, mechanics into the game, and then tacked combat onto it later when they felt like they needed more content.
I feel like I'm very excited for when we can build this up enough that JJ finally explodes and gives us his opinion.
I find it personally hysterical that the only space dogfighting like combat system I've ever truly enjoyed was Star Fox Zero. I love that that's like the one game in my entire life that I felt like, yeah, you really nailed it. But the game nailed nothing else, and completely everything else was on fire except for the dogfighting in Star Fox Zero. But yeah, really should have taken some cues from that particular element of that game because it's the only one that is good.
I feel like this game and that game are actually contemporary.
Yeah.
Which is insane. But they actually could not have taken inspiration from it due to weird development time.
Well, the update isn't contemporary, right? Because
That's true,
they only
yeah.
added dogfighting and like enemy ships, what, like last year or something?
No, there were enemy ships in the...
Really?
Yeah, because there'd be no reason to have lasers.
Mining?
Well, there's a mining laser. You have two lasers on your ship at the beginning. I think there were, but I don't think there was anything that was like... Because when I started the game, up again after the next update, I loaded in, got in my ship, went brrr, and went to a new galaxy immediately, and it was like, a fight has broken out. And I was like, oh, what? Like, what happened? And they were like, defeat all 6 enemy ships. I was like, 6?! I've only ever seen like one other guy!
I left my like starting planet and was being followed by 3 ships immediately. And I was like, well, fuck. And I just did not engage with them at all. I was just able to like fly to the planet. They followed me to the planet into the atmosphere, where I then was able to shoot them down from there. Because it was easier to just kind of like sit my ship and not have it moving and just kind of look around and shoot them. But like that, I feel like that was really unlucky.
I feel like dogfighting in this game feels like one of those big swirly pod arcade games. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like the ones that are meant to mimic the Millennium Falcon.
I was just going to say the gun...
the turret.
The turret, from the Millennium Falcon. Exactly.
It's like if you were in one of those turrets, but the base of the turret was one of those like giant plastic things you put under furniture to make it slide easier. Yeah. And then you're just like sliding around the turret independently.
I always imagined it was like, and I feel like there has to be an exact parallel to this in like a movie or whatever, a video game or something. But the cockpit is like set into the rest of the ship and can like freely move around because that's what it feels like, because that's what it looks like on your screen.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a complete mess because I'm sure that it's less tedious if you have better ship equipment. But like nearly every ounce of resource that I had in this game was funneled into basically increasing inventory slots wherever it was possible, and so I just had whatever lasers the ship that I was currently using had, and. Maybe it's less tedious, but it's also just not, like, super enjoyable. Probably the worst part of this game, for me, in my experience, and I know people, the longer you play, the more likely it is that you're going to find a worse experience, because this game is still a little bit, like, buggy, which I think is kind of to be expected with a game like this.
Yes.
But was getting, like, space wanted. Like, I was a space outlaw, and then they sent the police after me.
The space police.
The space police.
I'm not going to let you stop putting space in front of everything.
Space Cash, Baby Fark McGee's ex. How stupid is your planet? And we being me and my ship, I guess, flew out of the planet's atmosphere. It alerted me that they were sending the cops, the space cops, after me. And I couldn't fight them. Like, there was just no chance I was going to win this fight. So what I did was I flew in a straight line for 15 real-world minutes.
Oh.
Until I entered the atmosphere of another planet. I realized that I probably could have turned around, but I was like 6 minutes in before I realized that they wouldn't ever give up. And so, yeah, I just had to fly without the pulse engines because they disable them to another location.
Ugh.
Yeah, get out.
And it only took 15 minutes?
It was like, I think I went to a moon.
Yeah, you lucked out there.
Yeah. And got to a moon, and then took off, and then just went to a different galaxy.
Like,
I was like, I'm out of your jurisdictions, your space jurisdiction, space cops.
Yeah. Because, like, if you're traveling to
space pigs.
Yeah. Like, if you're traveling to another planet and, like, you just disengage, like, the whatever faster speed, it's like 2 hours to get to that planet. You're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I really like that as a feature, by the way.
Yeah.
The way that they give you constant time estimates at all your different levels of speed. I think they're pretty close to perfect on the 3, like, travel speed selections they have, too. I thought that the tuning on that was pretty good. But I love, like, it just adds so much for your perspective of the scale of the place. For you to go, like, oh, I'm just holding down W. Oh, like 7 weeks. Just and then you hold down to shift and you're like 19 hours. And then you pulse engine it. And it's like, oh, a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've never used the pulse engine and had a time estimate that was in the minutes. Like, I don't think I've ever seen it go, like, above, like, you'll be there in 4 seconds. And I'm like, when do I stop? Like, I don't want to cry. I don't want to do a Han Solo thing.
Oh, yeah, I played chicken with this game real hard, and it turns out it doesn't let you script with the pulse engines. You can just automate it. You can just put it and then just go straight toward an object. And then if it's ever dangerous, the game will be like, oh, the computer turned it off for you so you don't die.
Yeah.
Which is really convenient, frankly. But.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good decision. Yeah, because I did the same thing when I started the game. I was like, I'm going to crash into the ground. And then it was just like, whoop.
Have I talked about the triangle people yet?
You mentioned it, but you didn't talk in depth, so go for it.
Oh, okay. Here's the depth that I want to talk with them about. I like the personal character customization in this game a whole lot. I like that it has absolutely no costs of any kind. And I like that, as far as I can tell, the only, like, paid currency bullshitty stuff is really trivial, stupid jokes, and not any things that are, like, attached to your person. I love that you can just give yourself an awesome triangle head. And just immediately, from the first time that you visit one of those space stations, and the game doesn't care, it doesn't force weird narrative inconsistencies on you, and it doesn't force you to make your whole character right at the start of the game.
Right.
It tries to get you engaged first, which is, for this game, a pretty uphill battle. I can only imagine how much more frustrated I would have been if I had to keep following those prompts, like when I'm an hour and a half into the game being loaded instead of 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But I do like the different aesthetic to the player characters and to the machine people. Oh man, the machine people. Null's design is like one of my favorite robot designs ever.
Null's design is very, very cool.
Yeah.
I have kind of the exact opposite feelings about the character changing.
Dare you? How dare you?
Because I really like the idea of you being a person, like a lone person in space. I feel like I would have liked it a lot better if it was something you unlocked later. Because it's something that I would really enjoy playing around with, but I like the theming of you being like a lone guy traveling through space a lot.
I nodded in agreement for most of what JJ was saying, because it was things that I'm tertiarily aware of, but not on a first-hand experience. And the reason for that is because my No Man's Sky experience is that I was the person playing.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I never changed my character and never exited first person mode. So there was never a time where I was like, I wonder if I'm a triangle head guy, or maybe I'm a smelly frog man, or whatever. It sucks enough that I'm a smelly frog man in real life. I don't need to play one in a video game. But no, I like that they're both options, basically.
Yeah.
Because, like, the fact that, I mean, unless you're somebody, one, who wants to play as a human, and two, doesn't like playing in first person, then you're fucked. But otherwise, you have the option to not engage with
and
that.
I just didn't.
Yeah. Much like everything else in the game, you kind of just have the option not to do it.
Yep.
Except for mining those rocks.
Gross.
So my question is, have we struck bedrock? Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we jump into final thoughts?
No!
Cool. So, my thoughts on this game mirror a lot of what JJ was talking about near the end of the first half. Specifically, I think that given the fact that we do this podcast largely because we have an appreciation for having, like, varied experiences and wanting to sort of play different games and have a different experience with each of them and have this conversation about it. And No Man's Sky is a game that wants you to play No Man's Sky for a very long time. And if I was in a position, like JJ said, not working full time, and I was 15 or whatever, then I would probably have played this game for 100 more hours than I have, and probably gotten a lot more out of it. But this is kind of almost the same thing problem I have with Assassin's Creed, where it's like, yeah, if I had a lot of time, this game has a ton of depth and a ton of things that I would love to get into. Like, I get excited thinking about some of the stuff that's in this game, and then I just don't do it, because it's gonna take forever to do that. And that's kind of the whole thing. The game is built on downtime, and I don't not like downtime in games. I just don't like the quantity of it that's here.
Mm-hmm. This game, metaphorically speaking, it's not behind a paywall, it's behind a time wall. And I can appreciate how goddamn cool it would be to have my freighter fleet and to, like, send it out and to just, like, see, like, some pirates who are, like, flying around and, like scramble the jets. And then, things are going bad and, like, 3 of my fighters get shot down. So I, like, run out from the command post and, like, get down into, like, like my personal fleet and, like, Darth Vader the situation up with, like, 2 guys, like, flanking me on the left and right. And running out and shooting down some pirates. But the problem is that is a fantasy that is the same of everyone's fantasy that they want to have in a game with this kind of scope. Mm-hmm. And that's not a thing that humans can do right now. That's like 2 steps behind, like, teleporters is where I'm placing, like, that kind of, like, actual consistent open free engagement. And I'm not willing to work this long and collect this much ferrite for a goal I'm pretty sure the game can't meet yet, for just pure technical and, like, human time limit reasons. Right. Like, I want that game. I know you want that game too. This isn't quite that game. It's close enough if you're unemployed that you might enjoy it anyway.
I'm obviously, we found through the course of the episode, I'm way more negative on this game than you guys. And I feel like this is a game that I would like even less than I do now if I played it when I was 15. But I feel like, but as negative as I am on it, like, I do kind of feel similarly to JJ, and I can imagine a version of this game that I like that isn't that much different. Like, if there was just there's just a little bit more, like, authored content, like I said, like a little bit sprinkled in here and there on different planets to make them feel a bit different. Like, a little bit, like, there's, like, you get to a planet and something's happening, as I said. But as it is, though, I have found it really hard to engage with this game. It's not quite for me, but...
Yeah. I think that, like, a collective final thoughts for this podcast is so, like, it basically mirrors, if our thesis statement was what we said at the beginning, then our conclusion that backs it up is everyone experiences this game differently and it doesn't meet anyone's expectations fully.
Yeah.
Like, that is the story of No Man's Sky, and as unfortunate as it is, if you want an open world game, there are plenty of those. Go play Breath of the Wild. If you wanted a space exploration game, you can play Elite Dangerous or something of that ilk. If you want something that is a bizarre incorporation of all of these, then maybe No Man's Sky is the game that you want to play. I don't know. That's kind of...
If you like prog rock, though, your options are kind of limited, so...
That's true. If you love prog rock, just put some on, get in a spaceship, don't touch any buttons, and just look at space for a while.
Isn't that more of a psychedelic rock kind of thing?
You're probably right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What are we talking about next time?
It is October soon, and next time we're going to be kicking off what is going to be a kind of a very busy month for us with Harvester, a PC point-and-click adventure game that bucks the expectations of any rational human being playing it.
It's a personal favorite of both Chad and me.
Yeah, so we'll be back with that, and we've got a few good NoClip pockets planned as well. Until that time, if you want to get a hold of us, all of our contact information can be found at noclippodcast.com or at splattershot.pro.
Yes.
There you can find our links to our YouTube, all the previous episodes, email, Twitter, which... Thanks again to Janelle, who's taken over our Twitter and is now posting on our behalf. So yeah, thanks for listening, Spacefarers. I wish I had remembered like any of the dialogue from Starship Troopers, like that the propaganda video. Would have been a good way to end this.
Set your coordinates for the subscribe button.
Is this the new gag?
Yes.
Okay. How do you guys feel about, and by you guys, I mean the only person I could possibly address this to is JJ, about the new Catherine, two balls and a dick. Catherine.
No.
Menage a trois.
It has to be renamed to the new Catherine, two balls and a dick.